In this video, I'm going to teach you the exact system that allows me to take a meeting transcript from Tactic and turn it into action items, notes, quotes, proposals, and much, much more just using a simple make automation. So if you want to learn how to do this and how I'm using this to help my clients make tens of thousands of more dollars with their programs without doing extra work, stick around and let's dive right into this tutorial. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to teach you in this video how to automate meeting pages to go into Notion. And then I'm going to tell you how to build an automated meeting note taker machine, which is the meat and potatoes of this video, the thing that's going to save you the most time and potentially make you the most money depending on the kind of work you do, the kind of business you run. And then finally, how to take this process one step further, or actually many steps further, by showing you a couple of extra use cases that you can stack on to this automation that makes it so powerful. This, taking it one step further, is really where the money is going to be made. So make sure you stick around for that, because I'm going to go through that at the end once we've already built the whole system. Okay, and then first things first, I don't really have a point 2, I just have point 1 here, which is the stuff that you'll need to make this system work. So I'm using a transcription software called Tactic, which is the meeting software that I like to use because it is just the best in my opinion. I've used Fireflies, I've used Otter, I've used a couple other meeting transcribers that I didn't really care for as much, and Tactic is really, really affordable, and they are doing such great work with their software. The thing that I like about it the most is that if this is a Google Meet window or a Zoom window, there's like a sidebar that comes up here on the right-hand side that shows you the transcript as it's happening and allows you to tag things and make notes. Now, that's not super helpful for our purposes right now, but dang, on a meeting with somebody, it helps so much, especially if you meet with a lot of people that have an accent or talk really, really fast. It can help you understand what's being said a lot better than like the just standard Google Meet transcript. So I love Tactic. There's a link for them down in the description if you want to sign up. And then make.com, obviously that's where we're going to be building this system. You can do a similar thing in Zapier. I tried to set it up, but I just don't like Zapier as much, and I find that it's not really worth the price. Make is way more cost effective, so I like to use Make. And then Notion, you could set up a similar system to this in Google Docs or in ClickUp, but I'm a Notion nerd, and that's like half of what I talk about on this channel, so we're going to use Notion, and I'm going to show you why here in a second. And then obviously you're going to need like ChatGPT. I suppose you could do something similar with like Cloud or Perplexity maybe, but ChatGPT kind of takes the cake with this kind of automation. And again, you're going to see why in about 2 seconds when we start building. So in order to set this up, like I said, we need Tactic and we need Notion, first things first. In Notion, I have this meetings database that I use for all of my meeting notes, and it's not really meant to be like a two-way sync between your calendar and your Notion. That's sort of possible with Notion Calendar, and I'm actually going to be making a video on that here in like the next week or so. So if you want to learn how to master Notion Calendar, stay tuned for that. But what this is really meant to do is to be a place to capture notes that you can then easily translate into the rest of your Notion system. So the powerful part of this automation is that we have this blank meeting right here. And by the end of when we're done setting this whole thing up, it's going to be full with headers and text that are broken down from the transcript that we have built through this make process. So that might sound kind of heady and confusing, but basically all you really need is a database, and it can be super blank. Like obviously I have a lot of properties in here, but all you really need is a database to sort of catch these meetings, and it just needs like a date field, maybe some sort of tag. I have, a meeting URL to keep track of like the Google event, and that's pretty much all you need. You don't need any of this other stuff. And it's actually going to work better if this page is blank. So you don't even need a page template. This is a super simple thing to set up. If you know anything about Notion, setting up a database should be super easy. And if it's not, then subscribe, because I'm going to be making a Notion basics tutorial very soon. So that's all you need to get this started in Notion. The Notion part of this is actually very simple. Then what you're going to need is a Make account, obviously, a Tactic account. I don't know why it does the thumbs up there, but in my Tactic account, you have to go into these settings, And in settings, there's a bunch of tabs here at the top. And then one of the settings that you need to enable is actually, I think it's actually an integration. I think, yeah, you have to click into it. And then Google Drive, unfortunately with Tactic, there isn't a native make automation connection with Tactic, and Tactic is kind of slow on the game with that. They just developed their Zapier one, so if you're using Zapier to do something similar, this might help you, but we work around that in this instance using Google Drive. So it will automatically save transcripts to your Google Drive after the meeting is done. And I don't have it set up to use a shared drive, but you can do that. So it's going to save it in one place, and you can obviously view the folder. I just have it called transcripts, and it's nested inside of my calls folder, and you'll see why at the end of this video. But I have one kind of sample transcript in here that we're going to be working with, and that's all we really need. So once you get that all set up with Tactic, you're good to go there, and then you just need to have some sort of sample meeting, probably with yourself. Just hop on Google Meet, hop on Zoom, and try out Tactic and just generate like a fake transcript. And honestly, you don't even have to do that. You could have ChatGPT write you a fake transcript and just make a Google Doc and drop it into this folder as a tester. And you'll see why that will work here in a second. So this is what the automation is going to look like when we're all done with it. This might look intimidating, but really it's 4 of the exact same thing over and over again. So it's really not that hard. And we're just going to build one straight line of it, and then you'll see what these other 4 are for when we're done. So the Google Doc triggers it. It's getting the content of a document. Here, let me click in here. It's getting the content of a document as it hits that Google Drive folder, and then it's searching that database that we found, or that we built in Notion rather, and then it's routing it down these different paths. But really, if we zoom in here, it's adding a heading, and we do that before we do all of this, because otherwise it makes like a bajillion headings, because it's actually like repeating the sequence, and you'll see that in action. So we add whatever heading you want to kind of designate the specific section of the page. So in this case, it's like the meeting overview. And then it's sending the transcript through ChatGPT through a very specific sequence of prompts. And then the reason we have these 2 text parser modules, they're actually really simple. It's just using some regex that I didn't even write. ChatGPT wrote it for me, and you'll see why we do that in a second. So we're just kind of stripping out certain parts of the output from ChatGPT, and then we're passing it through JSON so that we can parse that JSON data and turn it into actual variables that we can then pass into Notion. And if that sounds intimidating, don't worry, it's not. We're going to hop in and start making this. All right, so let's get started. I actually just built this and then realized I started with the wrong module, so I'm sorry if there's a weird cut, but let's start over. I didn't want to lead you down the wrong path. So we're going to do something here, which is we're going to watch the documents, and this is actually not going to be our trigger. So we want our trigger to be over here, and this we're going to connect up at the end. So this is just going to hang out here for a second. And the reason why is that for testing purposes, it's going to be a lot easier to just feed Google the exact document that we want it to look through and get for this test. And then at the end, we'll hook them up so that it'll actually be dynamic. And trust me, it's just a lot easier than having to like feed it a document multiple times just to test it and to get data and things like that. So yeah, we're going to get the content of a document, and we're just going to feed it the document ID that we want it to work with. So we'll come back and connect that later on. Okay, so next we're going to get our Notion objects. So remember that database that that I told you about at the beginning. That's the database that we want to search and extract all the pages and objects from that database so that it can sort and find the correct one. So now we're going to search for my meetings database. This is one reason why, if you are a make builder, please use naming conventions for your Notion pages and your Notion databases. It will save you so much time, especially if you have multiple templates or client systems that use the same names or the same systems. Having a naming convention will save you a lot of time, I promise. So we want to filter by name. So if you remember over here, and we can delete these copies now that I was doing for testing purposes, we want the name to be the same as it is in the the meetings database, because that's how it's going to isolate the exact meeting that we're looking for. And I'll show you the little trick that I'm going to build into this system to make sure that it doesn't, if you have meetings that are recurring and have the same names over and over and over again, this will prevent that from happening. And it's kind of just like a hack. It's not maybe the smartest way to do this. There's other ways that I tried to do this by like isolating the date and making it match, but that was just such a pain in the butt. And this just involves a simple checkbox formula in Notion. So sometimes easier is better than smarter, just to get things done. So I'm going to limit it to 10 for testing purposes, but in the future, depending on how many meetings you have in your meetings database, you might want to increase the limit here. But I don't think it's going to matter a ton, because it's going to filter out and only find the one that matches. So we have our title of our document is what we want to match. Let's go ahead and run this just to make sure that it's working. Yep, we've got our meeting here, and then let's run this to get our data sent through. And we're going to say Eva and Madison chat because that's part of the title, so it should match. Perfect. So it found that meeting. This is the page URL. And now we're going to set up our routes, which I'm probably not going to build all 4 routes for you. Maybe I will. But our routes are where it gets interesting. So now what we want to do is we actually want to append page content. So we're going to append page content to that page that we just set up, that we just searched for and found in that previous step, if Notion ever decides to load this module, or make, I mean. Okay. Come on, Make, let's go. All right, I had to do a little reboot there because it timed out on me for some reason, but okay, here we go. So we're getting the page ID from that previous page, and then we're just gonna make a header. We do this to make it look nice and also to designate like what section of the transcript summary that we're using or making. So I'm actually just going to type in a value here. We don't need to map anything. I'm just gonna make the header say overview. Don't need any more of that. So I'm going to collapse that. And then I'm just going to add a divider because that'll just make it look a lot nicer on the page, and you'll see why when we're done. Okay, so that worked great. Makes being glitchy. All right, so now this is the fun part. This is where we add our prompts to the AI. So we're going to create a completion, and we're actually going to kind of prompt this in 3 or 4 different parts. I'm going to just use 4.0 mini. Depending on when you're watching this, there might be far better systems there, but this is how we prompt right now, which is to use a combination of system, user, and assistant. System is how we tell the chat, the AI, what it's supposed to be. So this is kind of giving it its character, if you will, giving it its kind of like assignment of who it's supposed to be. And that, I will grab a quick prompt that I have over here. This is actually part of a prompt that my business partner wrote, for the GPTs that we're launching. So stay tuned to that. That'll be fun. Okay. And then we're going to give it a user prompt. And this is important because this is basically the prompt that we're feeding it. And I'll include some version of these prompts in a document in the description, probably like a Notion page, so that you can look at them and use them if you're going to build this. They're kind of robust because I was, trying to get the best output possible, but you definitely don't need them to be as long. You can just write pretty normally and you'll still get a decent output. But I will say dialing in these prompts is where the magic happens in here. So do be cognizant of that and just try your best to get a good version. So one thing that's really important is that you need to have something to the tune of this in your user prompt, which is that you're telling it needs to put it into a structured JSON format. And if you're afraid of code, don't worry. I am also a no-code builder that has started to go a little bit low-code because eventually that's just the natural evolution of an automation engineer. But JSON is really easy to understand, and you don't really need to understand it that much. I learned pretty much everything I feel like I need to know just tinkering with these automations in JSON format. And basically what JSON does is it just wraps text in code in what they call key value pairs. So key would be like the title of the property that you would have in like Notion, for example. And the value would be just like the data that's going into that property. So if you had like a text property in Notion, it would say text, and then it would have the actual text body would be the value. You'll see what that means in a second. Don't freak out. It's really not that difficult. So all we're doing is we're just telling it the prompt that we are asking it to do. We're trying to get it to give us the 5 to 7 most important key points of this meeting. Tell it to ignore pleasantries and personal anecdotes, because it will, like, if you have small talk at the beginning of your meeting, it will start to summarize those things, and that can be a little bit embarrassing if you're working with a team. It just comes up with some funny ways of parsing those things. And you want it to focus only on the aspects of the conversation that are related to the work. That's pretty self-explanatory. So then at the very end of this user prompt, we're feeding it the text content of the document. So that is that. And then the final one, I think there's only one. Yeah, the final one is just how we're getting it to format it. Now, this is the part that took me some time to figure out, because Notion is hyper specific with how they want to receive their data. Notion is definitely not the best place to be automating this. Like, this would be way easier to just plop into another Google Doc. So if you use Google Docs, that's great. I personally like to use Notion, and the reason that this is valuable for me is it makes it a lot easier to generate action items and pull them into my project management software. Makes it a lot easier for me to stay in one place and not be hopping from like Notion to Google Docs and over. So Notion is a pain, but it's worth it in this case, and it's actually really not that hard as long as you have it kind of structured this way. So I'm basically telling it to give me an object that is a block. That's a Notion thing. And then it's telling it the type, which is a bulleted list item. So I'm getting it to give this to me in bulleted lists. And honestly, I had ChatGPT generate this for me. So this is not something that you have to like learn how to write. I'm just having it give me, here's the content, and then here's the first overview item. And then here's the content, and here's the second overview item. And then I'm just telling it to continue with additional bullets as necessary. It's really, really not that complicated. It just took a while to like troubleshoot it, but here I am giving you the answer. So you don't need to do that, which is great. So now we have that. I think I just set max tokens. Yeah, I set it to like 1,000. It won't use 1,000. But if you have a really long transcript, it might eat up some tokens. So now we've got that done. And now what we need to do is that part that I mentioned before to not be scared by, which is the text parsers. And the reason that we need to do that is because, I think I have it just set as a replace. Yeah, is because what this scary little looking thing is, for anyone who's not code savvy, is basically just a formula to tell it to, hey, cut out everything before that first bracket on the JSON. And the reason is that chat, for some unknown reason, unknown to me fully, puts this like little apostrophe JSON at the beginning of the message for some reason. I think it's because like when you're in a chat log with chat, like when you're in chat, it'll put it in a code box. So I suspect that that's what it's doing, is it's returning its output with that code box in place. So it puts like this apostrophe JSON thing at the beginning, and then it puts like apostrophe at the end to close it out. And that seems so simple, but it's really, really annoying because it doesn't do it consistently. Like not every single time will it have that, but it does it consistently enough that it will fail the parsing of the JSON because it's not proper JSON. It's like adding this extra stuff that we don't need. So all of this is doing, this is regex, which is just stands for regular expression. It's just a pattern that is matching and saying, hey, like when just match everything before that first left bracket. And we're just going to replace it with a square left bracket because that's what the JSON needs to start with, and that's what it needs to end with. So that's all we're doing here. It's really not that difficult. We feed it the text from the output here, which there's nothing there yet because we haven't tested it. Why is it giving me that? Oh, yeah. Whatever. We'll ignore that. So we're just going to clone this, put it next to it. And then we're going to do the same thing. It's actually a slightly different regex for this to get to the end of that bracket and replace it with our right bracket. See, not scary at all. Easy peasy. But one thing important that I figured out is you got to make sure that it's actually feeding it the output from that text parser and not the original message, because then you're just going to have the beginning is still going to be there. So yeah, make sure you change it to that. And then we're going to parse it through our JSON. And I don't think there was anything special about that. Sometimes you have to like configure the JSON, but we actually want it to come from this 16. I don't think I needed to configure the JSON at all. I'll check. Nope. So I didn't have to create like a data structure or anything. I just paste the text into that box from the text parser module into the JSON. And then finally we get to do the fun part, which is adding our transcript to Notion. So let's go ahead to Notion and let's do our append to page one more time. Append page content. And we're still just going to use the same page ID from before. And if it's going to time out on me again, that's going to be really annoying. And it looks like it will. All right, finally, we have our module loaded. I don't know why they've been so slow, but now we can start appending our items. So I think I'm just going to double check so I don't waste time in this video. Yeah, I think we just gave it our text and our bulleted list items. I think that's it. So we're going to make a text. Text. I think it's actually paragraph is what we need. Is that not the same over here? Bulleted list item. Oh, that's important. And then it's text. You see how picky Notion is? It's really picky. Google Docs doesn't make you jump through these hoops, but it's also kind of ugly. So you get what you get. But we're going to paste our content. Oh, I have to actually run a test. See, this is why it's so much easier to just run it from a specific document. Okay, I'm just going to do this for now. And then I'm going to connect this back up and we're going to see if it'll run. Okay, it's running well. Let's make sure chat's giving us what we need. And it's going to run it through several times based on the amount of bullets that chat gave us. So, gave us 7, which is pretty much exactly what we asked for. Let's pop back over here to our page. And then it just put text in every single one, but it did give us our 7 bullet points. So what we're going to do is we're going to delete this just so we know that it worked. We're going to know that it worked, but okay, now we're just going to take the JSON because now we actually have access to that field, that dynamic data. And we're going to pick that and then we're going to run it again. All right, it's passing. The chat module does take a while, and the more you have in here, oh, let's see what happened. So it didn't give us anything. So it says it was undefined. It should be defined, though. It called it something different. That's not good. Let's run it again, see what happens. This is one thing that I don't like about using JSON is that sometimes it doesn't give you the exact right title. So if it's changing the name every time, it's not going to target it correctly. So let's click in here. Yeah, see, it's changing the name. It's changing it every single time. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's troubleshoot that. Okay, let's change it. Let's run it one more time. 3rd time's the charm. We're still going to have to fix it because it's giving us something different every time, which is probably an issue with the prompt, to be honest. Yeah. Bulleted list item. Good Lord, so many things. So it didn't even pass it because it's probably not titled correctly. What did it give us this time? Key point. All right, chat. I have an issue with you. Okay, let's try. Maybe let's try a different model. Let's try that, see if it's going to give us the right thing now. This is kind of what it takes, though. You do have to just guess and check in order to make sure that it's going to give you the correct output, because chat just kind of decides to do what it's going to do. And that's not super helpful when you're trying to make something consistent. Okay, so that didn't even give us valid JSON. What did you give us, chat? Now give me your output. Okay, we've got our JSON content. Seems fine to me. Okay, took it out of that. Took it out of that. All right, let's see. Let's see if I try to just run this by itself with test JSON. It's not passing, so there's something wrong with it. So let's try again. Okay, let me remove this. Sometimes making it more simplified. Let's give it maybe another. Okay, I'm going to give it another assistant message to kind of clarify what we're looking for. And I'm going to keep it the same, actually, and just testing, seeing what it'll give us. Because if it's not formatting the JSON correctly, it's not going to pass to Notion, unfortunately. So we need to make sure that it's doing it correctly every time. And that's part of the fun challenge of setting this up, is that it's not going to pass it every time. Okay, what did you call it now? Rich text. Let's see what it gave us. Text content. Okay, I think that's how it's supposed to be. So let's try it one more time, because that's how it looked in the version that I got it to work. So hopefully it was just not grabbing the JSON correctly with the prompt, and adding that extra assistant message will hopefully like tell it like, here's exactly how you need to format it. Looks like it worked. Yep. Okay. So again, I will share those prompts with you, but just know that this is part of the process. Anytime you have to pass things through chat, it's always going to be a variable based on what chat decides to give you. So the more specific you can get with those prompts, the better. But it looks like it generated our whole 7 bullet list items. So let's pop over to Notion. See, we created a bunch of these because of the tests. So it was still passing that header, and not giving us any text. So let's see. Awesome. Perfect. Great. Okay, so this is awesome. It gave us a lot of detail here. It's very specific, and we have an overview. So now what I would do, once you get something like this that works, and by the way, if for some reason it's still not giving you the correct output, you may just need to create a specific data structure in JSON that shows it exactly how you want it structured. that's probably a video for another time because that does take a long time to do and I had to figure that out on my own. So if you want a JSON structure video that's very specific, drop it in the comments below and I might make that for you. But now that this is done, what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to hold Shift on my computer, copy these, copy and paste, and then I'm going to drag them on over to our second route. I'm going to delete this and we're going to do it again. So I'm not going to change much except for the header. So we're going to change a header and like, let's think, what are the best ones? Maybe let's do suggested action items because that's probably what most people are going to want out of this. So we're going to do suggested action items and that's going to be our heading. So instead of overview, we'll paste that. And then now I'm just going to go and steal the user prompt because I think everything else stays the same. So we have that. Yep, that's the same. And this is, yep. So this is the only thing that's like slightly different based on each of these 4 routes. I'm not going to build all 4 routes because I think you get the idea and you can make it what you want to make it and mess with as many of these prompts as you want to mess with. All right, so that's the only thing that we're going to change, and let's run it through again. And actually, let me delete, unfortunately, let's delete out the amazing output that we got from the first time, and hopefully it'll give us the same thing again. Don't embarrass me, Make. Let's go. Come on. It always takes forever. It's like so nerve-wracking watching the OpenAI modules produce because they take forever. Okay. Yes, we've got it creating some items for us. Awesome. We're on to the second route. I'm like so tempted to jump over to the page to see what it's producing, but I'm going to give it another second here because should be done here momentarily. Oh, yes. Awesome. All right. Let's see. See, it's happening in real time. Isn't that awesome? Okay. So now what we have here is a meetings page with an overview created with suggested action items. And it's intelligent because I told it to create a certain number of them between 3 and 5, and it picks its own version. Usually it'll go towards like the end, so like 5 to 7. It likes to over deliver, chat. But here we go. So we have with timestamps, we have suggested action items. You probably don't need timestamps on action items, but the prompt that I had must have asked for them. So we have this meeting notes thing. And now what we can actually do is this checkbox thing that I mentioned to you before. So once we've gone through route 1, route 2, however many routes you want to put in here, I would probably limit it to like 6 or 7 just because of timeout reasons. But now that we've done all of this, let's add one more thing at the very end, which is that we just want to check that box, the summarized box. And that way at the beginning, we can set a filter that says, okay, it has this title and it has not, as in that box is unchecked, been summarized yet. So what we're going to do is update, I think it's update a page. I could be wrong. Notion has a lot of similarly named modules, which can be kind of confusing at times. But I think, it's going to time out on us again. Make, what's going on? Okay, it finally decided to join us again. Okay, so we're going to go all the way back to our search objects, make sure it's the same page ID as before. Okay, this is not the correct option because we should be seeing options to change properties. So let's try this one more time. Okay, it wasn't bringing up properties, so it was probably not the correct way to map. So I'm just going to search for that database again, just like we did before. So we make sure that it's finding the correct one. And then we should get the opportunity to alter the properties so that we can just check that box. All right, here's our database, and then we're going to pipe in the page ID whenever this loads. Okay, database item ID. Then we're going to give it the page ID. And now we are seeing all of our fields here, which is great. And then we want summarize to be clicked to yes. That should be all. Okay. So now I'm going to actually run it one more time. You will eat up a lot of operations doing these tests, I will say. So you definitely need to get onto the make paid version if you're not already. Link in my description if you want to sign up. But it shouldn't be empty. It's not empty. So I don't know why. There we go. Just glitched on me. All right, now we sit here, we watch it run again. All the pretty lights. Let's go. All right, so we succeeded. I'm hoping that that was sped up for you because it was painfully slow for me. Okay, nice. We have our overview. We have our suggested action items. They're still loading. That's great. Now let's check. Perfect. It checked as summarized. So that's amazing. Now we've got that whole thing set up, and the final thing that we need to do is just set up the automation for sending the new meetings that get added to our Google Calendar to Notion so that the page already exists. And we could set up a route here to do that. I find that it's just better to keep them separate. It prevents, things from getting too clogged up. So I'm going to save this, and then, oh yeah, remember we have to watch our documents. So let's connect this up and move our start to there, and then let's connect these. So it's going to watch documents, and we're going to choose the folder that we want, which is calls and transcripts. I'm going to limit it to 2, I guess. That's fine. From now on, that's totally okay. And then we're going to get the content of a document, and we're going to grab the document ID from our module number 8. We should be good to go. So now that we're done testing, that will be sufficient, and we have our blueprint all ready to go. So let's go ahead and start our other scenario, which I think I actually have a scenario for this. I think it's just this. Yep. Okay. So this, I'm not even going to make it because it's so stupidly simple. So I'm watching my events on my Google Calendar. This is my Notion calendar, which is actually my old email. Should change that. And then it's watching the events by created date. I didn't change anything here. It's just going to grab them. You could get more specific if you wanted to, but this works for me. So then we create a database item in that same exact meetings database as you saw before. We're going to pipe in the summary of the meeting, which is just like, I think the title. Yeah, it's just I don't know why they call it summary here. They call it title. They call it name. They kind of change how they name things in Google Docs and Google for some reason. But okay, so the summary is the meeting title. I'm piping in the meeting URL with the HTML link. I am getting the attendee emails. So I have a property in that Notion database to put people's emails. They're not in here because I just made this meeting page manually, but it will pipe in attendee emails, which is helpful. And that can also be helpful for identifying the page later with other make automations. And then I gave it the start and end time. So it is creating a date. Don't have to do that if you're not using it as your meeting calendar manager. I said include time. Doesn't have to include the time. Just keep in mind with this automation, it's not a two-way sync. So if I make a page in my Notion database, it's not going to make a meeting in my Google Calendar, which is fine. I use Notion Calendar, which I told you about, and that takes care of that now. That's a recent addition. So if, again, you want more details on Notion Calendar, I have a video planned for that in the future, so definitely subscribe. But yeah, between these automations, the native tactic automation, and your Notion database, you'll now be able to create any meeting summary kind of style that you want based on the prompts that you put through it and the routes that you create. So the nice thing about this is, like I said at the very beginning, I promised that I would tell you how to make this even better. And one of the ways that we can make it even better is by what we now do with this information after it's been piped through this whole situation here and it makes it into Notion. Well, we had it create us a bunch of action items, right? But the problem with AI and problem with transcripts is it's limited to the types of action items that it can create. It's going to take its best guess, but it's not necessarily going to get it right and get it perfect every single time, right? But what we could do to make this even cooler is we could add another scenario, make a whole nother scenario to pipe those action items into like something like Slack and create a custom Slack app using Make where it sends us the action items that we've now generated from this meeting transcript, and then have some buttons in there so that in Slack we would be able to just kind of thumbs up or thumbs down the action item. Like action item by action item. So if it gives you 7 possible action items, you can, thumbs up, thumbs down, and then send that data back to your Notion database page and create the action items that you've said thumbs up to. So you could completely automate the process and just add that one little human step to make sure that it's going to generate action items that are actually useful for you. The other thing that we could do here is, instead of having this trigger based on just the generic folder that Tactic sends everything to, what we could do is in our Google Calendar or in our Notion database, because most of our stuff is going to be created based on the calendar, unless it's literally made that second, what we could be doing is just manually adding a tag to the meeting type. So I have this marked as a peer chat, but I also have like discovery chat or client chat, and some of this can be automated. So in this automation here, if the calendar event is coming from somewhere specific, so let's say I use cal.com for my calendar bookings, I have different types of events that get booked with me. So instead of having this just generic Google Calendar trigger here, what I could do is set up multiple different pathways and scenarios so that when I get a discovery call booked with me, or if I get an onboarding call booked with me, it goes to a different path. And then what we can do is take, based on the tag in the Notion database, move the transcript file from the generic transcript folder into a specific folder called onboarding or discovery, and only trigger this scenario after that point. And why that would matter and why that's important is then we can customize the prompts that we send it through. So for instance, I'm doing this with my client and my business partner right now. We're onboarding a bunch of beta testers to our program. And based on the amount of work that both of us have on our plates right now, we don't have the time to do a lot of this manual onboarding work where we're like listening to our clients' problems and breaking them down and being super hyper focused on it. We're cutting out a lot of that manual work and getting to the point where it's only the work that is most important for us to be doing, actually physically doing with our minds. So we're cutting a lot of that part out using this kind of workflow where AI is coming in and building us the summary. It's looking for keywords. It's pulling out the key data that we know we need for every single client that goes through our program, and it's giving us core blocks of information that we can now extract and use, instead of us having to go through and manually make notes on this meeting, manually extract data from the transcript. We're sending it through this kind of filtered process so that we can use custom prompting to tailor the prompt output that we're getting based on the type of meeting that it is. So we take our clients through a specific sequence of meetings. Meeting 1 is about this, and meeting 2 is about that, and meeting 3 is about that. And there's pieces of information that we need to extract from each of those meetings. that is similar or the same every single time. So even if, client A goes through meeting 1, I still need to produce block 1, 2, and 3 from that meeting. And if client B goes through meeting 1, I still need to produce block 1, 2, and 3 from that meeting. So that's the kind of stuff that can be automated when you understand this basic structure and this basic principle. And finally, because I've been ranting for a really long time, the other exciting thing that I want you to think about is just this part of the sequence right here. So forget about how we got this information in here, but think about all of the different use cases that you could have feeding some information into Notion, into ChatGPT, and taking the output in this same JSON structure and popping it through this, cleaning process. It's annoying that we need these 3 extra steps, but basically we can get Chat to give us almost anything. And if we structure the data correctly and we clean the data correctly, we can pass it to almost anywhere. So this is the power of automation. I hope you're seeing that here, and I hope that this video has been valuable for you. If it was, please leave a like and subscribe down below. This is a brand new channel, and I have a lot more videos like this in store. If you have specific use cases, blueprints, Notion setups, questions that you want me to address in videos, please do let me know. I am taking your suggestions into account because I want to make videos that you want to see and that you want to watch. So all of that said, thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for following through this process with me. I hope you have an excellent day, and I will see you on the next one. See ya.